the page. So the HTML page has a title, right? Let's call it positioning. And now this title won't really appear anywhere except on the tab from the browser. But if we want something to be visible also in the body of the page, then we need something like a page 1 tag here. So now whatever we have here, if I refresh the page, it shows the text that I have written. And this is the title tag of the HTML, right? I'm just reminding a little bit what HTML is here. Okay, but how do we get the geolocation? So for that we need to use JavaScript. I'm going to write it in this head region here. And we will start off with an object called geolocation. And I'm gonna set it to null at this point. But now I'm going to write a piece of code that attempts to get an object from the browser that is capable to give me the geolocation. So it is possible that if you're working with an old version of the browser, or an old browser that maybe doesn't even exist anymore, these kind of features will not work. So we are attempting now to get this geolocation value. So 2 checks here ensure that we have it available. So if it is available, then we just use our variable here and instantiate it to that, so we don't have to call this big text everywhere. So it's in the navigator object, one attribute of the navigator object from the window. But it may not be available. So if it's not available, then we would need to say something to the user, to alert the user that, hey, geolocation will not work. So we could do that here, but more or less now, if it's null, it means it didn't work. So we could say, if we have the geolocation, we can start to use it. Otherwise, okay, this is, I have to remember to keep the text up, because if it goes too down, you can't see it from, in Joensuu at least. I think in Kuopio you have better screen, but do let me know when something is not visible, if the font is too small, or if the text goes behind me or something. Okay, otherwise, so I'm going to tell it that I have some problem with the geolocation. But if it works, so now, assuming that the geolocation works, we can call a method from it called getCurrentPosition. So this getCurrentPosition is a function that is going to expect a callback function. It's going to expect another function that will fire whenever the position becomes available. So it will take a little time for it to start to have the location. And when it's done, I'm going to say here on location update. So this is the parameter that I'm giving to it. And this is going to be our function that fires when we do have the location. And this event is going to contain all the information that we are looking for. So it's going to have the latitude, it's going to have the longitude. We'll find out what those are tomorrow, but I have a suspicion you know what, have a good idea what they are already now. Okay, good. But this code that we have here that is doing the checks and whatever may have some issues on some browsers because it may execute before the page fully loads. So a good idea is to have here in the body a check for when the page loads. And then I'm gonna use this old school system here that I'm gonna define a main function that will do all this stuff, but only after the page loads. So, yeah. And when the location is updated, I'm just going to log all this information that we have here to see what we have to work. That's it. I'm going to save the file, I'm going to refresh the page, nothing happens. Okay? So this console log function, this one I can read the output from it if I open the console in my browser. In my development I'm going to use Google Chrome. I recommend you to use it, but you can use anything else. Usually the console opens when you press F12. It's something that looks like this. Or I guess if you go to Tools, Developer Tools, yeah, Tools and Developer Tools, or it even had their Ctrl-Shift-I, another shortcut. But in general, F12, to my knowledge, works on Firefox, on Edge, on Chrome, on everything. Okay, now this console is very small text and I want you to see it, so I'm gonna zoom it in. And actually it has many components, but I'm gonna be interested in this console. Okay. And I see something. I see here position. And if I refresh the page, I see it again, and I see it again. Every time I refresh the page, it's a new position. It's actually the last position that was recorded by this device. And I can investigate the properties of this, like the coords object from here. And I can see the latitude and the longitude of this value. So what I'm inspecting here is whatever this onLocation update function is printing when the location becomes available. Now, this is going to be a tough one because I'm not going to go out with my PC and run around to show you that the location is changing. I could, but I don't. And I have to remember how to do it. Here I somehow, okay, not there. Oh yeah, this place here, this sensors. Ah, geolocation, no override. So I'm going to simulate that I am going outside by activating here London instead. I have here the values, I can even modify them by clicking on them and entering another text if I want, or pressing these values, these arrows here. But now when I'm going to refresh the page, this 58 and 39 should change to whatever is written on the bottom. So I refresh the page, chords, and it did change to something else. Now this computer does not have GPS sensor or a SIM card either. The way it knew some location to work with was from the IP. It's another method for positioning that works in these devices nowadays, but it's usually very bad. It usually tells you where the service provider tells it to tell you. So not very reliable, the least reliable of all of them. Okay, so I have now location here, very nice. But if I change this location, nothing happens. So my application just initializes, and the first thing it's doing, it's printing whatever location it last knew, the phone last knew. Let's make it to also update every time I'm changing these coordinates, or every time you make a step outside, or you get a new reading from the satellites. Movement can appear even though you're not moving outside because of the noise that is happening. Like the accuracy is not perfect, usually within 5 meters. So even if you stand still, some phones will constantly pick up new locations. Some won't, because they also use maybe the accelerometer sensor, which sees the phone standing still and not moving at all. So to conserve battery, it probably thinks it didn't move at all according to this other sensor. It means there's no point to ask for the GPS new information and so on. It's very, very strange world out there. Some things do it one way, some things do it another. But let's make it so that our coordinates update here every time I'm changing them. Very difficult. Instead of get current position here, which I'm going to comment out, we are going to say watch position. That's it. Refresh the page. Now we have the coordinates, our log printing there, but if I change something, I get a new coordinate, and a new one, and a new one, and a new one, and now you notice that the timestamp is changing every time I click. So now it should say 44.5 and 12.8 if I look at the properties, and it does, and all the previous ones show the previous locations. So now it's updating every time new reading comes from satellite or cell tower or whatever. Now it comes from this console that I'm simulating my location. So I'm faking the location so I can teach it to you guys. Okay. So this is more or less it, how you get the location, and it's doing all those fancy things with the calculations, the physics, the relativistic effects. All the things are in the background, but you just write 30 lines of code, not even that. Okay. But the app still doesn't show anything. So let's make it display the coordinates here, otherwise it just looks like an empty page. If we want that to happen, I'm going to output the coordinates. I'm going to use a div. And I'm going to say here, instead of console log the event, well, I'm going to define a string equal to latitude, column. I will concatenate this string with event dot coords. So if you remember, I have to take the coords object from there, and then latitude and longitude from there. And then I'm going to concatenate some space again. And do the same for the longitude or longitude, or I'm not sure, people call it in different ways, but I kind of like longitude, but for some reason I'm calling it differently now. Okay, and then this string, we will put it in this coordinates div we defined earlier. So document that. So I refresh the page. Undefined, undefined. Oh, it's not capital L. Sorry about that. So here, L, L. And actually this is most likely defined, so I could do that. Okay. So now we have the values there, and if I'm going to fake the coordinates even more, every time I'm pressing it, it's updating. So this is more or less also how tracking apps work. They record your location every time they update, they put it together into a trajectory, and then you have a trajectory of running around or whatever. Okay, now that that is out of the way, let's figure out how we also get this device orientation. So how am I holding the phone relative to magnetic north? In the main function, after the geolocation is done, I'm going to write here, add an event listener. And I think the name was device orientation. I may be wrong. We'll check soon. But anyway, after you add this event listener, you have to give it a callback function. So on orientation change. And the same thing is gonna happen here as well. We are gonna start to analyze this event in the console, and then we will figure out how to display it on the screen. I hope this works. Let's check it out. It doesn't have accelerometer device. It doesn't. It will not register, but the sensors have another thing that I can use here. Okay, interesting. I'm going to set it to portrait. Wow. Interesting. A reload is required, something. Okay, let's refresh the page. Very cool. Okay, so I'm getting here some strange things, some alpha, beta, gamma. Yeah. It's not Greek class, it's they are angles. Okay, they are angles for each of the different axes of tilt, so I can modify them one by one. You can play around with these, and you can figure out what each of them control. But today we are gonna play with beta. So beta does this. Phew. Okay, so this is what we are gonna play with today, this angle. And our logging is doing something here. So you can see it's actually logging alpha, beta, gamma, but many other things are also here. But those are the most important that we are going to work with. So alpha, beta, and gamma is probably where G is here. So we will work with this beta angle. Okay. So beta is event.beta. Okay, and I could put it somewhere on the screen, but I feel somehow nostalgic because this VVD course ended, so I'm gonna use the canvas to move some point on the screen, to animate something, right? Okay, so I'm gonna put here a canvas element. And when the orientation changes, every time the orientation changes, I'm going to take this element okay. I'm going to do something I didn't do during the VVD course, but many of you probably would have wanted me to do it. I'm gonna make it full screen. Okay. And then for now, let's try to get the context. So the context is an object that allows me to draw on the canvas in 2D here. And tomorrow we will learn how to draw it in 3D. Just as a spoiler, tomorrow we will implement Google Earth in the canvas. So don't miss the lecture. Okay. So with the context, we could, for example, draw an arc, draw a circle. Begin path, arc, and now I'm gonna need an X and Y, a radius, and here it also asks me for angles. I'm gonna put here 0 and math pi multiplied by 2, and I will explain soon what it is. Don't get scared. And stroke. For now, I'm just gonna draw a circle at the location that is gonna be the middle of the screen, the center of the screen. So the width divided by 2 and the height divided by 2. And now I can get here the location, the first component of the location, the second one. And the radius, let's have it 100 pixels. Okay, so I'm gonna just draw a circle in the middle of the screen with a radius of 100 pixels, if it works, on every orientation change. So for now, not very, okay, nothing happens because I didn't change the orientation. Okay, something happened. So my canvas element is here, and now it's getting a circle. It's drawing a circle every time the orientation changes. But I want this circle to move up and down according to the beta angle. Okay? So what is going to happen now is, I'm going to say here, the location, it's not going to be just this center location. So this is now center. But the location where I'm going to draw the circle is going to be wherever the center is on the x-axis, but the y of the center is going to be affected by beta. So now every time beta moves, the circle is going to go up and down. Very, very simple. Okay. So let's see. Refresh the page. Changing the beta value. Well, I'm gonna just drag here the phone to the right. So you see, we have now an application that, depending on what is the angle for this beta, it's going to move this circle up and down a little bit. Okay? Now, you will probably say something like, but you are just tricking us all the time, because these values are not really coming from accelerometer. You're playing with them in the right and they are moving the thing on the left, so how do we know you're telling the truth? And I kind of agree with you. So I'm gonna open this page on my mobile phone. Okay. I open this page on my mobile phone, and I'm going to put Team Viewer on. So what you see now is my mobile phone. It's this thing here. I just have to move the camera a little bit. Sorry, not that one. That one. So now my phone here is actually loading the page that we are just defining now, that we are writing. And if I move it a little bit, you can see that on the screen that circle is responding. But this interface is really bad.
Not mobile friendly.
Not mobile friendly. So what we're going to do in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to teach you about how to make this interface mobile friendly. Okay, it's going to be important in your projects because it looked fine here, big enough, you can read it, but it doesn't look good here. So let's get it to look good here and see the first problem. The first problem, can you tell me what the coordinates are? Your eyes are getting bad. Come on, look, it's here. I can zoom it in, it's easy. Good interface, I can zoom it, but then I don't see my circle anymore. So let's see how to really fix these problems. So first of all, this font size. You can see that the size of the font doesn't change according to the size of the screen at all. And actually in Chrome, you have this device toolbar here on the top. If you press that, then you can choose here a device like the Galaxy S5 or the Pixel 2 or the iPhone X or the iPad, or even have this custom size screen. So then you would see how your application looks like on the different screen sizes. I don't need to buy 100 phones to test on it. I can use these tools to test on them. So you see that the size of that text is really small on most of these devices, on most of these sizes. It looks relatively okay here, but even here I had the zoom on, so it's not very big. And if I change the size, it stays the same. So a neat thing that I like to use this console for is to edit the CSS, the styles of these elements right here in the browser, and when I'm happy with it, I can paste it in the source file. So I could say, for example, font size equal to 20 pixels. 50, round number. I fix it. But then when you have to open it on a smaller screen, you get this kind of stuff. Okay, so this is a problem because on the small screen you're just gonna get text and you're not gonna see my circle anymore. Pixels are usually bad. Now I don't remember how these are called, unfortunately, but if I put here VW, 5VW, I think V stands for viewport and W stands for width. So this means that the width of the viewport, 5% of that width, it's going to be the size of my font. So you notice how it changes size according, but the title of the page doesn't. So the title is bad there. But this font size should be okay now. So I'm gonna go back to my phone in TeamViewer and I'm gonna refresh the page. Okay, it doesn't refresh the page properly. Oh, sorry. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's in the console, but I didn't save it in my file. So I should probably open a style tag and say here that for my coordinates object, put the font size of 5VW. So now I refresh the page. Okay, and something happens, but maybe it's a bit too big or anyway, it becomes a bit more readable. Let's make it a bit bigger actually. Let's make it 8VW and also put line break between them, because otherwise the text is just too small. So here it looks ridiculously large in the browser, but if I go back on my phone and I refresh, okay.
Maybe you can use the meta tag, the HTML to make it like that.
The meta tag.
Yeah,
viewport.
Meta viewport.
Okay, but anyway,
It's worth it.
let's try that after I finish with these other things. So far, I think it's decent. So the meta tag to do what?
Yeah,
Viewport.
to scale, you use the viewport and it optimizes your website for that.
Okay, teach me that afterwards.
Yeah, it's just simple tag.
I think I may know what you mean, but I'm not 100% sure, so I could learn something new today. Okay, so this is one thing that we can do here. I'm gonna remove also this title from here because I think it's gonna be obvious what we are doing in this app. You have a big latitude, longitude, it must be yours. But the canvas, okay, the canvas is this small thing here. It only becomes big when I get, when I move the angle here. So my canvas resizes to the full size of the page only when angles appear. But when that happens, some strange things happen here still, like there is a small gap on the left, and these scroll bars start to appear even though I set it to be as big as the page. Not the best way to do this maybe, but if you use for the canvas absolute positioning, I hope I'm writing in the canvas now. I maybe am not. Just a second. No, I'm not. I don't know what I did there. But if I paste that text in the canvas, what is going to happen is that now the scroll bars disappear and the canvas fills the entire page. somehow like maybe I expect it to be. So I'm gonna do this same CSS trick here on the top, but absolute positioning is something you should use rarely. There are other ways to do it more efficiently. Oh my god. Okay. So now, now the canvas uses the full screen. But this circle here, so this circle here always stays the same size, no matter how, what is the size of your screen. So if you're going to open this on a watch, on a smartwatch, it's going to be maybe a pixel or, it's going to be so big that it's around the screen of the watch, you don't even see it. So I want this circle to also scale with the size of the screen. And one way to do that is to take the radius here, instead of having it fixed, maybe make it depending on the width of the canvas or something like that. So I could have, for example, this multiplied by 0.1, 10% of the canvas width. So that means that if we are going to look at it on this screen or this screen, then the circle is more or less going to change size similarly to how the latitude and the longitude on the top. Now, one more trick. I'm going to put also a text in the middle of the circle just to say that this is the beta angle. But also, also this beta angle. When I demonstrated here on my phone, okay, so now the circle is slightly bigger. It moves very little. I would like it to move all the way to the top and all the way to the bottom, basically. So I'm going to do the same thing with the beta angle. It's going to have values here between 180 and minus 180. So I could, for example, divide this by 180. Now I have values between minus 1 and 1. And I could multiply this by the height of the canvas, divided by 2. So from the center you want to go half the height to the top and half the height to the bottom. I'm going to save the file, refresh on my phone. Okay, so now the difference is much more significant here. So you can actually see that it is working depending on how my orientation is. And one more thing, I do want to say that this is the beta angle there, so I'm going to try to write some text, but I don't remember how to do it. So if you don't know how to do something, you do that, and then you copy that, and then you rename that and rename that. And then I'm going to do something very fast here, and I'm going to say I want the size of this text to also scale similar to how the radius of the circle is changing. And then the text, let's have it say beta. And I want to put it at the same location of the circle. Saving the file, refreshing my phone. That's not what I want. Okay. Okay, very good resource here. So this is what I want. Text align is equal to center. I want it in the center of the page.
That's the line.
Yeah, text align. So text align. I have to remember to rename this. But I also want it a bit lower. Now it looks like the center is here at the bottom. Good idea. As good as any other. Text baseline. But the internet is amazing nowadays. See how easy it is to Google if you know some keywords there. So middle, text baseline, middle. Okay. Now, does it work? Okay. So it is the beta. The coordinates there maybe change if we go outside. I suspect they do. But one very important thing that I have to tell you now. My web page on the top here starts with HTTPS. That's it. If you start it with HTTP, it doesn't work. And if you go to the console, you're going to learn things like that the get current position, watch position. You should consider using HTTPS because it doesn't work anymore for the old ones. It's a security issue. It's the thing that also makes your phone ask you, do you want to use location here to allow? Otherwise, any web page can track you or whatever. So it's a security risk. I think, yeah, even the accelerometer doesn't make the circle appear. So I'm not getting, yes?
Sorry, this is the, yes? Or you just don't finish the other task?
It's almost.
Almost.
Okay. So it doesn't do anything. It doesn't print coordinates because they don't fire, and the angles don't do anything. So definitely keep this in mind if you want any responsiveness from this app. Okay, but I think that this is more or less everything I had to tell. But if you have any questions, now is time to ask.